I used to believe that silence meant peace, that if a house was quiet enough, nothing bad could happen inside it. I was wrong. The morning everything cracked open started like any other, soft light slipping through the blinds, the hum of traffic way down on the street, the smell of coffee still clinging to the air. I was standing in the kitchen of our new place, barefoot on cold tile, counting boxes and pretending that starting over was simple. Then my phone rang. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. No name, no city, just digits staring back at me like they already knew too much. "Hello," I said, my voice still heavy with sleep. There was a pause on the other end. Long enough for my stomach to tighten, then a woman spoke. "Listen carefully," she said. "Do not tell your husband I called, and do not go back to that apartment until you hear what I have to say." My heart started beating louder than the room. "I'm sorry, who is this?" Another pause, a breath shaky this time. "I sold you that place," she said, "and I forgot to turn something off." I leaned against the counter. "What do you mean forgot?" Her voice dropped like the words themselves were dangerous. "There's a camera hidden. I installed it years ago and never removed it. Yesterday, while you were out, I saw what your husband did." The room felt smaller. My coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor, but I didn't flinch. "I don't understand," I whispered. "What did you see?" She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice sounded tired, not scared, just done. "I saw a man you believe is dead." My chest burned. "That's not possible," I said automatically. "You're mistaken." "I wish I was," she replied. "If I were, I wouldn't be calling you, I wouldn't be telling you to come meet me alone. And I wouldn't be warning you that once you see this, your marriage won't survive it." Silence filled the line. Then she added softly, "Neither will your sense of who you are." The call ended. I stood there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark microwave door. 42 years old, successful, married, safe, or so I thought. I told myself it was a scam. I told myself people lie, but my hands were shaking. And somewhere deep inside me, a memory stirred, not a thought, a feeling. The kind that doesn't come from logic but from old wounds that never healed right. I grabbed my coat. I didn't leave a note. I didn't check the locks. As I stepped out into the morning air, one truth settled heavy in my chest. Whatever was waiting for me was already inside my home. And it had been there a long time. The city looked the same that morning. Same buses coughing smoke at the corner. Same woman walking her dog past the bakery like she did every day at exactly 8:15. Same sky, low and gray, like it hadn't decided what kind of mood it wanted to be in. But I felt off, like I was moving through a picture instead of real life. I didn't tell my husband where I was going. I didn't even text him. That alone should have told me something was wrong, because after 15 years of marriage, I didn't go anywhere without checking in. Not out of fear, out of habit, out of respect. This time I just walked. The park she mentioned sat 2 miles from our building, a small one, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. There was a memorial fountain at the center, old stone, chipped at the edges, water trickling like it was tired of running. She was already there, sitting on a bench near the back, shoulders hunched forward, hands clasped so tight her knuckles looked pale. She wore a long coat even though it wasn't that cold. Her hair was pulled back sloppy like she'd stopped caring how she looked halfway through the morning. I knew her the second I saw her, not because we were close. Because she had once been part of a chapter of my life I never talked about anymore. She stood when she saw me. "You came," she said. Her voice sounded different in person, smaller, like it had been scraped thin over time. "You called me," I replied. "You scared me. You said things that don't make sense." She nodded slowly, like she'd already accepted that. "I won't ask you to believe me," she said. "I'll show you." I hesitated. That hesitation saved nothing. She reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. The case was cracked, screens smudged with fingerprints. When she turned it on, the light reflected in her eyes, and I noticed how tired they looked. "Before you watch," she said quietly, "you need to understand something." I crossed my arms, trying to keep myself steady. "The apartment," she continued, "was never really mine. I lived there, yes. But I didn't own it the way you think. I was managing something." "Managing what?" I asked. She swallowed. "A secret." She tapped the screen. The video loaded slowly, black and white, grainy but clear enough to recognize the space instantly. My stomach dropped. It was my pantry, the same narrow room I'd walked past that morning, boxes stacked inside, the light off. The same door my husband told me was jammed and needed fixing. A timestamp blinked in the corner. that morning. The door opened and my husband walked in. I felt a strange rush of relief at first. See, I thought, it's just him, this is ridiculous. Then I saw what he was carrying, a tray, food. He set it down on the floor like he was feeding an animal. Then he stepped back and waited. Something moved in the corner. At first I thought it was a shadow, then it stood up. A man, thin, dirty, barefoot, alive. My breath caught so hard it hurt. I leaned closer to the screen, my mind screaming that this was wrong, impossible, fake, until the man lifted his head. And I saw his face. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just whispered the name I hadn't said out loud in over a decade. Baby brother, and in that moment I knew my life hadn't just cracked, it had been built on a lie from the very beginning. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly the bench was cold beneath me and my hands were pressed flat against my thighs like I was afraid they'd float away. "That's not him," I said. My voice sounded calm, too calm. "That's not possible." The woman beside me didn't argue, she didn't rush me, she just let the video keep playing like the truth didn't need help. On the screen, my husband said something. There was no audio, but I knew that mouth. I knew the way his jaw tightened when he was irritated. I knew the look he gave when he thought someone was beneath him. He kicked a plastic bottle across the floor. The man flinched. That's when my chest collapsed inward. Because my brother used to flinch like that as a kid whenever our father raised his voice, whenever the world felt unpredictable. It wasn't dramatic. It was instinct, muscle memory. I leaned closer, the scar above the left eyebrow. The slight droop in his right eyelid when he blinked, details only love remembers. "We buried him," I said, my throat tightening. I stood over the casket, I touched the wood, I signed papers. "I know," the woman replied. "That's why this works." I turned to her, anger finally breaking through the shock. "Works for who? For your husband." She paused, then added, "And for everyone who needed him gone without actually killing him." My head spun. "Why are you telling me this now?" I demanded. "Why not the police? Why not years ago?" Her mouth twisted, not quite a smile, more like regret. "Because I was paid to stay quiet," she said. "And because until yesterday I thought you knew." That sentence hit harder than the video. "Knew what?" "That you agreed to it," she said softly. "That you signed off on keeping him hidden." I laughed. It came out sharp and ugly. "I would never do that," I said. "I loved my brother. I spent years grieving him. I blamed myself for not seeing the signs." She finally looked at me, then really looked. "That grief," she said, "was part of the plan." She reached into her bag again, this time pulling out a folded document, old, yellowing at the edges. "Every month," she continued, "money came in, small amounts, regular. From an account in your name." My hands shook as I took the paper. Charitable donation, that's what it said. The amount wasn't huge, just enough to never raise alarms. I remembered it instantly. A foundation my husband suggested years ago. Said it helped people get back on their feet. I never questioned it. I trusted him. I always trusted him. "You didn't know," she said. "I can see that now." I stared back at the screen, at my brother kneeling on the floor of my pantry, eating like he was afraid the food might disappear. "What happens if he finds out you told me?" I asked. Her answer came without hesitation. "He'll erase me," she said. "Like he erased your brother, like he's about to erase you." The wind moved through the trees, rustling leaves like whispers. I realized then I hadn't come to learn a secret, I had come to choose a side. And whatever I chose next is someone wasn't walking away alive. I didn't say goodbye to her. I don't know why. Maybe because goodbyes feel final and I wasn't ready to accept how final this already was. I stood up from the bench on shaky legs and handed the tablet back like it was something hot, something that could burn straight through my skin. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I thought about lying, about saying I'd call the police, about promising I'd be careful. Instead, I told the truth. "I'm going home." Her face drained of color. "That's the one thing you shouldn't do." "I know," I said, "but he'll expect me to act normal, and right now that's the only advantage I have." She reached for my wrist. "If he suspects anything, he already suspects everything," I interrupted. "That's the kind of man he is." She let go. "Then take this," she said, pressing something into my hand. A small flash drive, copy of everything I have, videos. Dates, logs. I closed my fingers around it like it was a lifeline. When I walked away, I didn't look back. The ride home felt longer than it ever had. Every red light felt personal. Every passing face felt like they knew something I didn't. By the time I reached our building, my hands had stopped shaking. That scared me more than the fear. The lobby smelled the same, cleaner and old stone. The elevator hummed as it climbed, slow and steady like it always had. I practiced my face in the mirror inside. Calm, tired, normal. The door to our apartment was unlocked. That shouldn't have surprised me. "Hey," my husband called out. "You're back early?" His voice drifted from the kitchen, warm and casual, the voice I'd trusted with my future. I stepped inside and closed the door softly behind me. "I didn't feel well," I said. "Went for a walk." He appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a towel. He smiled when he saw me, but his eyes scanned my face like he was checking for cracks. "You look pale," he said. "Sit down." "I'll make you something." I nodded and moved toward the couch, my legs steady, my heart not. As I passed the pantry door, my body reacted before my mind did. A chill ran up my spine, my chest tightened. He noticed. "Still haven't unpacked that mess," he said lightly. "Door's sticking anyway, I'll fix it later." I sat. He handed me a glass of water, his fingers brushing mine. I didn't pull away, that was the hardest part. "How was your morning?" he asked. I took a sip, forcing my hand not to shake. "Quiet," I said. "Too quiet." Something flickered behind his eyes just for a second, then he smiled again. "Good," he replied. "Quiet is good." As he turned back toward the kitchen, I looked at the pantry door, and for the first time since my brother's funeral, I let myself believe the impossible. He wasn't gone. He was waiting. And I was sitting in the same room as the man who put him there. The question wasn't if I would open that door, it was whether I'd survive what happened after. I waited. That was the rule now. Wait, watch, breathe like everything was fine. My husband moved around the kitchen, humming softly the way he always did when he felt in control. The sound scraped against my nerves. Every clink of a spoon, every cabinet opening felt louder than it should have. "You should lie down," he said without turning around. "Moving day takes more out of you than you think." "I might," I replied. "After I rinse this glass." I stood, slow and casual, and walked to the sink. From there, I could see the pantry door clearly. Plain, white, ordinary, a door I'd passed 100 times without seeing. He stepped behind me close enough that I could feel his breath near my ear. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired," I said. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. Then his phone buzzed. He checked the screen, frowned slightly, and slipped it into his pocket. "I've got to step out," he said. "Work thing shouldn't be long." My pulse jumped. "Now?" I asked, careful not to sound too eager. "Yeah," he said, grabbing his jacket. "You'll be all right." I met his eyes. "Of course." He leaned down and kissed my forehead. It felt the same as it always had. That scared me more than anything. The door closed behind him. I waited until I heard the elevator chime, until the building settled back into its familiar quiet. Then I moved. The pantry door was cool under my palm. I turned the handle, locked, of course it was. I pressed my ear to the wood. At first nothing, then barely there, a sound, breathing, slow, uneven. My throat tightened. "I'm here," I whispered, so softly I wasn't sure I'd actually said it. "It's me." The breathing stopped. Seconds passed, long ones, then something shifted on the other side of the door. A faint scrape, fabric against concrete. A voice followed, hoarse, careful. "Maya?" I covered my mouth with my hand to keep from making a sound. "Yes," I breathed. "It's me. I'm here." A pause, then, broken and unsure. "He said you didn't want me anymore." That sentence hit me harder than any lie I'd heard all day. "I never said that," I whispered. "I swear to you." Silence stretched between us, thick with years I couldn't get back. "I can't open the door yet," I said, "but I will, I promise." "How long?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. Instead, I said the only thing I knew was true: not forever. I stepped back just as the sound of keys echoed in the hallway. My husband was home. I retreated to the couch, heart pounding, face carefully blank. When he walked in, he looked at me like he always had, like he owned the rooms, like he owned me. And now I knew something he didn't. That door wasn't just locked, it was hiding the truth. And once the truth came out, nothing in this house would stay standing. That night I slept beside a stranger. He lay on his back, hands folded over his chest, breathing slow and even. The man I had built a life with. The man I had trusted with my grief. The man who had smiled through my brother's funeral and then gone home to lock him behind a wall. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. Every sound felt sharp. The hum of the fridge, the click of pipes in the walls, even the rhythm of his breathing felt like a countdown. I didn't sleep. I practiced not crying. I practiced not shaking. I practiced the face I'd need to wear from now on, the one that said everything is fine while my insides screamed. Sometime near dawn, he shifted and turned toward me. "You're awake," he murmured. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "New place, new noises." He smiled in the dark. "You'll get used to it." I almost laughed. Morning came slow. Gray light crept in like it didn't want to be noticed. He got dressed for work, same routine as always. Shirt, watch, keys. "I'll be late tonight," he said casually. "Meeting after hours," I nodded. "Drive safe." He paused at the door, studying me. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again. I met his gaze and held it. "I am." For a split second, something cold flickered behind his eyes, then it was gone. The door shut. I didn't move until I heard the elevator descend. Only then did I let myself breathe. I went straight to the pantry door and pressed my ear against it again. "I'm here," I whispered. A rustle. "I thought I imagined you," my brother said quietly. "He says that happens when I'm tired." I swallowed hard. "He lies," I said. "A lot?" Silence. Then carefully, "Are you real?" The question broke me. "Yes," I said, my voice cracking despite my effort. "I'm real and you're coming out of there." "How?" he asked. I closed my eyes. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I'm learning things and he doesn't know that I know." A pause. "You can't let him find out," my brother said urgently. "He doesn't get angry the way normal people do. He plans." I leaned my forehead against the door. "So do I," I whispered. I spent the rest of the day watching the apartment like it was a crime scene. I noticed things I'd never noticed before. The way the pantry handle didn't match the others, the faint scratch marks near the baseboard. The air vent that hummed even when the heat was off. By evening, I understood something terrifying. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't temporary. This room had been built on purpose, and the man I married hadn't just lied to me once. He'd built an entire life around that lie. As the sun went down, I stood in the kitchen holding the flash drive the woman had given me. I realized then that love had nothing to do with what I was about to do next. Survival did. And once you choose survival, you stop being afraid of who you might become. That night, after he left for his meeting, I didn't turn on a single light. I sat in the dark with my coat still on, listening to the building breathe. Old buildings do that. They groan, they sigh, they whisper through pipes and vents like they're carrying secrets from one apartment to another. For the first time, I wondered how many of those secrets were buried inside these walls. I moved slowly. Careful, like the house itself might tell on me. The pantry door looked different now, not just a door, more like a warning. I crouched and ran my fingers along the frame, the baseboard, the floor. Everything had been done neatly, too neatly. Whoever built this wanted it to disappear. I pressed against the wall beside the door, hollow, my pulse spiked. "Can you hear me?" I whispered. "Yes," my brother replied instantly. "You're close." "I need you to tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning, not all at once, just enough." There was a long pause, then he said it was for my own good. I closed my eyes. "He said people were looking for me," my brother continued, "that I owed money, that I'd messed up bad. He said if I stayed quiet, if I stayed hidden, he'd fix everything." My nails dug into my palms. "I didn't know he told you that," I said. "I didn't want to believe him," he went on. "But then you stopped coming." The calls stopped. "He said you were done trying to save me." My throat burned. "He said you chose your marriage over me." That was when something inside me snapped. I stood up and went to the toolbox we hadn't unpacked yet. I found a screwdriver. Then a hammer. I weighed them in my hands. "I'm getting you out," I said. "Soon." His breathing changed. "You can't just break the door," he said. "He'll know." "I know," I replied. "That's why I won't." I knelt again, this time focusing on the air vent near the floor. It was slightly newer than the others. The screws were wrong, modern, not original. I loosened one, then another. The metal plate shifted just enough for a thin line of darkness to appear. Air rushed through. My brother gasped on the other side. "I can see light," he whispered. So could I, not much, but enough to know the wall wasn't solid all the way through. This wasn't just a room, it was a passage. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside the apartment. I froze, keys rattled. I shoved the vent cover back into place and stood, heart pounding, just as the door unlocked. He walked in, coat over his arm, smiling like the world was normal. "Hey," he said, "you're up late." I smiled back. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. He studied me for a second too long, then he nodded. "Me neither." As he walked past me toward the bedroom, I realized something chilling. He didn't know I was breaking his secret. but he did know something had shifted, and men like him don't wait for proof, they act on instinct. Which meant our time was running out. I didn't touch the vent again that night. That was the hardest part, knowing where the crack was and choosing not to widen it yet. Every instinct in me screamed to tear the wall open, to pull my brother out with my bare hands and run. But instinct is what gets people killed. I lay in bed beside my husband, staring at the dark, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. Slow, even, controlled, he slept like a man with nothing to fear. I slept like a woman counting exits. Sometime after midnight, he shifted. I felt his arm slide over my waist, heavy, possessive. The same arm that had held me during funerals, the same hand that had locked a door on my brother. I stayed still, didn't flinch, didn't pull away. In that moment, I understood something brutal and clean. Love doesn't disappear all at once, it dies in pieces. By morning, I had a plan, not a good one, not a finished one, but a beginning. And beginnings are dangerous. When he left for work, I waited exactly 5 minutes before moving. I went straight to the pantry. "I'm here," I whispered. My brother answered immediately. "He's gone, for now." I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, my back against the door. "I found something," I told him, "a way through the wall." "Not today, not yet, but soon." His breath caught. "You have to be careful," he said. "When he realizes he's losing control, he won't try to fix it." I closed my eyes. "He'll erase it," I finished, "like he erased you." Silence. Then softly, "If you have to choose." "I won't," I said. "I already chose." I stood, heart pounding, and pressed my palm flat against the door. On the other side, I felt it, pressure, his hand mirroring mine through wood and plaster. For the first time in years, we were that close. "I'm not leaving you," I said, "no matter what he told you, no matter what happens next." A knock echoed through the apartment, sharp, unexpected. My blood went cold. I stepped away from the door just as my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. "He knows." I looked up at the pantry door, then toward the front of the apartment where footsteps were already approaching. And in that instant, right before the lie collapsed, right before the house turned on me, I realized the truth. This wasn't the beginning of my escape. It was the moment the cage decided to fight back. If this story pulled something tight in your chest, if any moment felt uncomfortably real, you're not imagining that feeling. You're not alone. Take a second to like this video. It helps stories like this reach people who need them but don't know how to ask. Subscribe to the channel for slow burn, emotionally true stories about survival, betrayal, and quiet strength told in a voice that doesn't rush the truth. And if you feel safe, share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Have you ever trusted someone who hid a truth this big? Did you notice the signs or only see them after? Stories don't end when the screen goes dark, they stay with us. So stay aware, stay strong. And don't let anyone lock your truth behind a wall. Subscribe.